name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my January wrap-up. Now, I know that this January wrap-up is a little bit late, and that's because the last weekend in January, first weekend in February, we went out of town. So like Friday, January 31st, we left. We didn't come back until Sunday, and I just got a little bit tired and behind because of that. I still put up videos, I just haven't had time to sit down and film this wrap-up yet. But I am super excited to say that I actually read 10 things in January. I'm sure some of you guys have been watching these videos and know I was struggling a little bit near the end of 2019 to get back into reading after having my son in August. And actually one thing that I was talking to my husband about, I was looking on Goodreads and they have this new, I don't know how new it is because I haven't been on like the PC version in a while, but they have this new like tracking system where you can actually in your stats page see like how many books per month you read. And August of 2019, after having my son, was the only month since I have been on Goodreads since January of 2012 that I have not read a single book. So I was very excited that I was able to actually read 10 things in the month of January. I have to say that that's probably because I read something every single day in January. Even if it was only one chapter, I made sure I at least tried to read. I don't think that's gonna happen necessarily throughout the entirety of the year because I already didn't read the first 2 days of February because of that weekend trip I said we had. But I'm getting back into the swing of things. I have been reading every day since then, and so hopefully I can keep up these numbers. Maybe not necessarily like the exact number of books, but keeping up my pages read and getting things done. And I'm super excited because I really enjoyed doing that in January. So I guess without further rambling, I'm going to get into the things I read. I personally like to go in order of the order that I read the books in. I know some people do it from like worst books to best books, and if you guys like to see that more, let me know. I've just always done it sort of in chronological order. So the first book that I read in January was Strange Exit by Parker Peavyhouse. This was actually an ARC version that I got from NetGalley, although I do believe this book has been out now. I think it came out in January, and I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. This is a very interesting book. It follows Lake, our main character, who is on a spaceship that doesn't seem to have any adults. I believe they were all underage children. There was some sort of thing, catastrophe, I actually don't know exactly what. Something happened on Earth, and what they did is there was this, I guess, rich guy, captain of this ship, who held sort of a lottery for minor children. And I say minor children, I think everybody's under the age of 18, I'm pretty sure. And if you won a place on this ship, then you got to be sort of saved off of Earth from this catastrophe. And so basically everybody's on there. They don't know where the captain is. And not only that, but the ship is sort of failing. And so Lake has taken it upon herself to go into this simulation that all of the passengers were in while they're in their like sleeping pods. Like they're in sort of like a hibernation chamber, and while they're in there, their brains are in a simulation. And so in order to save the ship and return to Earth, they can only do that when everybody wakes up. So it's a very sort of weird concept and book, and I really did enjoy the ride that I was taken on. There were only a couple things I want to say that I didn't quite enjoy as much, and that's why I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't quite understand why we got certain points of view than others. So most of the book follows Lake, and I really enjoyed her point of view. There was a secondary character where we got a couple of his points of view, which wasn't too bad, but then there was like 2, maybe 3 chapters of like a one-off point of view for each, and I just didn't fully understand that one. I think it was trying to give us more into the insight of some of the other passengers and other characters, but for me personally, I didn't really understand why we got one-off points of view, especially since none of it really seemed to make a difference in what was happening in the story. Like, I almost would have preferred it to just have been Lake's point of view. I did really enjoy how weird and quirky the story is, and I have a different book by Parker Peavy House on my shelves, The Where Futures End, and it's been there for a while, and I really did enjoy the writing style and everything, so I think I need to pick that one up soon. But I really enjoyed this one. Like I said, I believe it came out in January, and so if you like sort of like weird sci-fi-y speculative sort of stories, definitely pick it up. Then I read Reverie by Ryan LaSala. This is another book that I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I think I liked this one mostly in the first 3/4 of the book, and then the last quarter of the book is where it sort of went down from like a 5 to a 4 star for me. This one follows our main character of Kane, who after a near-death experience has some like short-term amnesia. We find out that he has some friends that he didn't even realize were friends because he doesn't have any of those memories to support that. Not only that, but there is a aspect of this book that is very fantastical and very, I want to say, quirky again. They're called reveries, but basically they're like almost like subconscious dreams and aspirations of other people. And in this sort of world that Kane lives in, the magic, I guess, is real. I don't know how to explain that exactly because it's a very common world to us, except for the fact that there is some sort of magical force around that can create reveries. And so if somebody's subconscious dreams are a little bit too strong, they can manifest in the real world, and Kane and his friends can sort of go through them and experience them without actually like having their brain in them, because the people that are in these reveries don't realize that it's not real life. Like, it's almost like when you're dreaming at night. A lot of people don't have like the lucid dreaming thing where you know you're dreaming, you're just in it and you're there for the ride. This one I did really enjoy. It has definite LGBTQ elements in here, especially since our main character of Kane, I believe, is gay. And I really did enjoy the story. There were some very good elements, and it was, like I said, very quirky. My thing of why I made it a 4 stars is that last quarter of the book just got too quirky, and it didn't fully make sense to me near the end. Like, I was fully on board, and I know some other people that have reviewed this book have also had a little bit of a hard time comprehending some of the quirkiness, and I was really on board for the first like 3/4, but the ending came a little bit too fast, and the resolution came a little bit too fast, and it was all just like all the quirkiness that was in the first 3/4 of the book thrown together and mashed together, and it lost me a bit. I would definitely read more by this author, and I really liked the very original concept of this book, but it just got a little bit too hard to comprehend near the end of it. Next, I read Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow. This was actually one of the challenge books that I was challenging myself to read. I'm doing the Shelf Love Crate 52 reading challenges that they gave to us in the advent calendar in December of 2019. I'm doing one a week basically until the year is over, and this one was to read a contemporary. So we had Girl in Pieces. I gave this one a 3.5 stars. This one follows our main character of Charlie, who at the beginning of the book is in sort of a mental institution. She is a cutter. I think she tried to commit suicide. There are lots of trigger warnings for this book here, so just definitely keep that in mind. There's drug use, alcohol use, there's mentions of an attempted rape. There's a lot of stuff in here that's very heavy, and I gave this a 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed the beginning because it felt a lot like Girl Interrupted, the movie, and I really liked the setting and her relationships with the other girls in that area, and I really liked the end as well, because it definitely, this book takes Charlie on a very big emotional journey. My only thing is, in the middle, it got a little tedious because a lot of the stuff in the middle was very day-to-day type of issues, of her trying to get better and not cut and all this kind of stuff. And I definitely think there's a good message and stuff in here, but for an overall enjoyment perspective, I really enjoyed the first part and the ending and got a little bit slogged in the middle, and so that's why it's a 3.5. The next book that I read was Artifact 1, Volume 1 by J.T. Cruel and Vince Hernandez. This is another book that I got off of NetGalley, so it was an e-arc, and this one is actually a graphic novel comic bind-up, I believe, of the first 4 issues, maybe. Usually they're 4 issues per comic bind-up. And this one, because like I said, it was from NetGalley, is not actually out yet. It comes out on March 3rd, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I am completely planning on picking up like the hard copy version when that eventually comes out. But this was a very beautiful and stunning graphic novel, comic bind-up. It follows our main character of Remy, who is part of an alien race, but so is everybody on this planet. It takes place off-world, off of our world at least, and it definitely has some very sort of religious, political sort of overtones on their world. They have a like ruling religion that is very strict. If you disobey it or try and go against it, you are killed automatically. And I do have to say that you have to get through a little bit at the very beginning of that kind of stuff in order to get to the part that I really enjoyed. There was a big twist about a third of the way through this volume, and oh my gosh, I was not expecting it. I was so excited for it, and it completely turned the whole like world around, so I'm not going to get into it too much, but that's why I give it 5 stars. I am so excited to see more in this series, and it was just really, really good, and the art was amazing too. Like, both story, art was great. Another NetGalley arc was Dekoboko Sugar Days by Yusen Atsuko. This is a boys love manga. I only gave it 3 stars. This one follows Yujiro and Rui, who have been friends since they were younger. One of the guys, Yu, actually rescued Rui when they were kids from a storm drain, and so we definitely have very stereotypical characterization in this book. Yujiro is seen as the more masculine, angry, not really necessarily angry, but very hot-headed maybe. He can definitely turn on a dime that way. He's also the shorter of the two, and so it feels a little bit like Napoleon Complexy, where he's the short, more masculine one, and he has a little bit of a hot-headed temper. And then the other one, Rui, is taller, more feminine, and very much more soft-spoken. So keep in mind, there are definitely going to be like stereotypes in a boys love manga, especially this one. I really enjoyed, I think I want to say it was the first 2/3 to 3/4 of it. I liked the whole will they, won't they with the relationship, and the fact that they were friends to begin with is always a plus for me. Where it broke down, and the reason I only gave it a 3 stars, is this is a single volume boys love manga. There is not going to be any sequels, at least as far as I have been aware. For everything, it looks like it is completely finished. It is a boys love manga, so they did get sexually explicit in it. However, and this, I guess it's sort of spoilery, I'm just gonna do it anyway. These are both boys that are virgins. They have not had sex with girls, guys, anything like that. However, the sexually explicit scenes were very mature and complicated, and it was definitely not virginal first-time sex. And so it was a little bit uncharacteristic, at least from what I thought, because they were like doing much more than they should have. And then as soon as they had sex the first time, the rest of the book was sex. Like, literally, that was all they could think about. There was no other characterization anymore for these two boys. It was just, I want to go have sex with my boyfriend. So I did not enjoy that very much. I loved the build up to the relationship, but then almost as soon as they consummated it, it was just, it devolved from there. So this one is also not out yet. It actually gets released on February 18th. This video should hopefully be up before then. And so If you guys like boys love and you want to read it, again, it wasn't a bad one. There was no like rapey overtones, because some boys love has that stereotype cliched, like, I don't know how to explain it, but some of the boys love sex stuff definitely seems non-consensual. There was none of that like overt rapiness in it, which I was happy for, but it was a little bit juxtaposed at the end with the characterization from what they were at the beginning of the book, so it was not more than a 3 stars for me. Next, we have Love, Fortunes, and Other Disasters by Kimberly Karelias. This is the first book in the Grimbod series, and this one actually was another prompt one, and it was to read a book with a maze, and there is a maze in this. It is very near the end. I actually had to go on Goodreads when I was doing this TBR to find a book with a maze, and this is actually a reread for me that I read at least 4 years ago, and I gave it 4 stars then. I gave it a 4 stars now. It is a very, very cute sort of story. It follows our main character of Fallon, who goes to Grimbod, this town, for high school, and this town, or in this world in general, love is real. Like, love is a person, sort of. They can change their gender and everything too, though, so it's not an exact person, like a real human, but love is a real entity. And in Grimbod, there is a person who does fortunes. They made a deal with love, and all of the fortunes come true. Well, Fallon, going to school here, got the fortune that her love will never be requited, and her and a few other friends and people that she meets at this school also have fortunes that are not necessarily the best thing, and they decide that they're going to take love down and fix their own fates, basically, for this. It is a little bit campy. There's not a whole bunch of character growth from the beginning to the end of this book, but it is really, really cute. I did enjoy the love story in this, and it was a nice, quick, fast read. So I obviously rated this one the same that I had before. It's a nice, good 4 stars, and I really enjoyed it. Then I also read First Kisses and Other Misfortunes by Kimberly Karelias. This is a short story. I think it's supposed to be like a novella, but it's only like 70 pages total, and so I definitely feel like it's more maybe like short story length, but it takes place in between the first book and the second book in this series. This one follows our character of Nico, who was one of the side characters in the first book, and this one I did give another 4 stars. It was very short, but it actually had a little bit more character development compared to the first novel. It was just really, really adorable. I can't really go into this description much because of the first book, but just know it does follow one of the secondary characters from the first novel, and it was really cute. I sort of wish it was a longer book, but it was still a complete story for what it was, and I'm glad I read it. It was also, when I purchased it, free on Kindle for Amazon, so I didn't have to pay anything for it. Then I also read the second book. This is Love, Charms, and Other Catastrophes, also by Kimberly Karelias. This is the second full book in this series. This one I gave a 5 out of 5 stars to. I really, really enjoyed it. Basically, I feel like this is a perfect example of like a brand new author, because that was her first book, finding her footing a little bit more. This one follows Hijiri, who is another side character in the first book, and she wants to be a love charm maker after the events of the first book, and love brings her a boyfriend made just for her because she has no experience in that, and if she wants to be a love charm maker, she sort of needs to figure that out just a little bit. The characterization in here, there was definite character progression, and so everything that I had a little bit of an issue with, not like a full issue, but a little bit of an issue with in the first book, definitely got fixed in here. Again, very cheesy, sort of campy, but it was a perfect, like, cute, semi-magical love story, and I just really, really enjoyed the characterization of Hijiri and Ken in here, who is the boyfriend that Love made for her, and I really, really enjoyed this one. I don't know if this author's written anything else yet, but like, I'd be totally up for more. Next, I read Pretty Little Werewolf by Katie Salinas. This was another prompt, and this was to read a book that was from the perspective of a non-human. I was gonna say not a human, it didn't quite make sense. It did. Non-human. So this is a story about a werewolf. This is a self-published book that I've read self-published books. I sort of hold them up to the same standard that I do normally published books, because I have read some really, really good ones, and this was a 2-star. It's not her first book. She has written some other ones as well, and I have a different book from her down on this other shelf here as well that I want to say was one of the more recent written ones a couple years ago when I purchased these. But I really, really wanted to like this one. The cover is gorgeous. This is about a girl named Giselle who is in foster care, and she keeps getting moved around to different homes, basically because she is a werewolf, and when that time of the month rolls around, people don't always know she's a werewolf, but they know something is off about her and they can't really control all this stuff and they just don't want her. Well, this book starts off when she goes to a new foster family who happen to all be werewolves as well, so they understand where she's coming from. My biggest issue with this was a lot of the writing style. This is a third-person book that was interspersed with her thoughts, and it didn't quite work. Like, I almost feel like it would have worked better if it was a first-person book, but also her thoughts were a little bit, not juvenile, they just sounded really wrong. There are 2 guys in here. One is a werewolf from another faction. It almost felt sort of like it could have been Romeo and Juliet because their families don't agree with each other. And then there's another guy who is part of a witch coven, and anytime she's around them, all she does is talk about how hot they are. But she also, you know, was a foster kid and was like, I don't trust people, but she wants to trust the guys like immediately. And then she has some foster siblings who want to have her in the family because they've already been adopted. But she's very sort of standoffish with them, and the characterization was just sort of all over the place. The writing, again, the writing was the worst part of it, but also it ended so quickly. This is only 250 pages, but like the ending seemed like it came to a conclusion so fast. Also, of course, she figured out everything by herself, no help needed, and these factions of werewolves are like warring with each other, and yet she like stood up to the alpha werewolf on the other side, and all of a sudden he's okay with it. Like, she's like a 16-year-old. I don't know. It was very weird. One of the guys she calls sex on a stick. It was very, very awkward to read, and by, I think even before halfway through, I didn't really want to finish it, and I just kept doing it. Sometimes I feel like I should have done reading vlogs with books that end up like this. However, the part of it is I don't realize that it's going to be like this until I'm a certain amount of the way through. So instead of me giving you my live reactions to a lot of this stuff, because I had a lot, I get to tell them to my husband, who doesn't always get it, but he lets me ramble, so it's fine. But yes, I really wish this was better. Also, like I said before, there was 2 guys. Obviously, we got a forced love triangle. But it didn't seem like she had any sort of actual connection to either one. It was very, very forced. She also didn't want to be in her new family because of reasons that did not make sense. Okay, this would have to be its own video for me to fully explain what I didn't really like about this, but I gave it 2 stars because I didn't DNF it. That's it. And then the last book I have here for January is A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. This was another prompt one. We had 4 in January. And this one was to read a book that had been a previous DNF. Yeah, former DNF. So this one, I guess I should sort of explain, because I did sort of explain before. This is a book that I've had on my shelves for a while. I have the whole series, actually. And I started reading this over 2 years ago, I want to say. Oh gosh, it might have been 3 or 4 years ago. It was at a previous house. And I got about halfway through, and then I didn't finish it. I really enjoyed what I had read, but I didn't finish it. And looking back on it, the reason is because we moved house. We moved to this house, and I just never picked it back up. So the first half went by pretty darn quickly because I had already read it. And I ended up giving this book 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. The writing style is amazing. I loved Lila and Kel and like the characterization and the magic, and it's such a complicated world because there are 4 worlds technically. But she doesn't like info dump or talk down to you that you don't know what's going on, because you don't. You have to just sort of get through it, and little bits and pieces come to you whenever they come to you. But I really, really enjoyed it. This is also a like fully completed book here. There is no cliffhanger. So even though I'm currently reading the second book right now, there wasn't like a big cliffhanger of like, oh my gosh, I need the next one because I have no idea how this ends. This was a full realized arcing story, and you get the conclusion in this book, and then there's just, you know, more in this world in the second book. And so I really, really enjoyed this. I loved, like I said, the magic system, the characters, and the action. Like, it was so good. I'm actually really, really glad that this was the last book I read in January. I didn't want to put it down. I loved it. I really just loved it. So those were all 10 books that I read in January. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up to let me know. If you guys have read any of these, I would love to hear what you guys thought of them. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do have videos up Mondays and Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye!